I need to open by stating the fact that this video is not my original artistic vision. However, you can see that by signing up to my Patreon and getting the director's cut. Does artistic freedom include the ability to change a piece of art? This is a much more philosophical concept to generally talk about, although I'm going to bring it down to straight logistics as much as I'm able to. When I say an artist changing their own work, what am I talking about? Because obviously artists, they change that's the entire artistic creative process. You don't just submit your first draft unless you're E.L. James. So what am I even talking about when I talk about an artist changing their art? Well, first thing is, let's put a timestamp on it. I'm talking about the alteration of a piece of art after it has been made available to the public. Anything done to the artwork prior to that point, that's kind of a different conversation. And there are conversations to be had about the environment in which an artist is allowed to work and how much freedom they have within that environment. But that's not a conversation I'm really up for having, although I'll touch on certain elements at one point. I mainly want to focus on what do we do about an artist who wants to change a piece of art after it is already out there. Now, given the fact that I have repeatedly espoused the idea of death of the author, it shouldn't be too surprising to anybody that, broadly speaking, and most of the time I'm going to say, no, you shouldn't be able to do that because you are affecting the available experience and also potentially trying to remove the experience that some of your audience or viewers or consumers of your art have had. You are taking that experience away from them and replacing it with something else. And while you maybe can say, well, they have their memories of the original version, memories are fallible. Your memory of the experience is not the original experience. Memory is not only fallible, it is malleable. So if they come in and experience your new version, that might ultimately just supersede their memory of the original version. So you are taking something away when you update a piece of art after it's already been out there. Obviously, the quintessential version of this is the Star Wars films, the original trilogy, and how many freaking times George Lucas altered those films. And every time he did, the versions he made prior to that would not be released again. Here's the funny thing about that, though. While I feel to a certain degree robbed of my original viewing experience of those movies, my original viewing experience wasn't actually pure in the first place because the version of, say, A New Hope that I saw didn't have the original text crawl. Because the original text crawl, when first released to theaters, didn't say Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope. It was later that was added. So that was on the version that I saw. That was really the only major addition to the version that I saw. But then later updates went on. And so here I am getting snippy about no longer getting able to see the version that I grew up with, when in truth, the version I grew up with isn't even truly the original version. But that adds in an extra layer when you're talking about a piece of art that actually has legs and sticks around generations on. Because if you keep altering the thing, then each new generation, when they come in, whatever version is current is their version. And then if you update it and change it again, you're now robbing multiple generations of their version. Yet at the same time, only the original generation of viewers truly knows the original experience, and everyone else is already dealing with a modified version. See, this is what I mean when I say that things get weird and murky trying to talk about this. Now, let's also cop to the fact that most artists, if given the chance, would probably want to alter their pieces of art. I don't know who first said it, but there is a saying that 90% of creators loathe everything they made more than 5 years ago. And I don't know how absolutely factually statistically accurate that is, but it certainly feels accurate. And as a creator, yeah, I look at a lot of my old stuff, or I look at some of my old writings, and I think, oh my God, what? And I would want those things altered. I would want those things changed. I look at the videos that were the start of this channel, which were scripted shorts shot by me on a crappy camera, barely understanding angles, not knowing how to do lighting worth a freaking dang, and I barely know how to do it now, but I could do it better now than I did then. And I would happily replace those with a new version. But should I be able to? I think part of the question, if we're getting more real world and practical about it, is whether or not a revised version of a piece of work completely replaces the original piece of art, or is it in addition to it? So there are now multiple versions. That would seem like the ideal compromise, wouldn't it? Because if you have, just to use the film example, because this sort of thing does actually happen with film, not so much with something like paintings or a novel or what have you, but with something like film, you will not uncommonly have a theatrical release and then a director's cut. And if we have both, isn't everything fine then? Well, from a consumer's perspective, possibly, if we set aside the fact that if they want to get a full understanding and experience of the different alternate versions, they may have to pay to see the thing more than once. But let's set that issue aside for the moment. From the consumer's perspective, yeah, that seems to sort it. But from the artist's perspective, they're now still compromised because the version that they wish to replace is still out there. And this is where I'm going to bring in a little bit of what I set aside before, which is talking about the conditions under which it was made in the first place. Now, director's cuts for films are an odd thing for me because there are, and I think film possibly more than any other medium aside from video games where, changes to the original artistic thing could actually just be bug fixes. So that's even murkier. But outside of video games, I'd say that director's cuts and film, is something where it's been normalized for us. But there's only been, to my understanding and my opinion, a handful, like less than half a dozen instances of times when an artistic vision was truly killed when taken away from the director, and a director's cut proved that their version was completely superior. And I'm not talking about little tweaks. I'm not talking about an extra 10 minutes. I'm talking about fundamentally it was a different movie. And in these cases, a better one. There aren't a lot of examples where that's actually happened. There's Brazil. There's Blade Runner. Although even that one, multiple versions of the director's cut. And I would say Kingdom of Heaven. So I say there's probably about half a dozen. Off the top of my head, I can only name 3, 2 of which are directed by Ridley Scott. Go figure. But for as much as the director's cut has become a staple of the home viewing experience and the release to home media, is it actually justified? Does it make any sense? I mean, obviously, it's done because they can make more money off it. But again, let's set the capitalist issue to the side. What is the artistic value of 2 only marginally different versions of a film? And this is going to be an anecdotal thing, but I have noticed that if over time only one version kind of keeps going forward and another one gets more or less dropped, it's usually the theatrical cut that gets dropped. A movie that I quite enjoyed was Michael Mann's The Last of the Mohicans. Now, I've got personal connection to this because I'm actually named after the lead character, not from the movie, from the book. I'm older than the movie. But I like that movie a lot. I think it's really good. I think Daniel Day-Lewis is good. I think Russell Means is good. I think that the acting is terrific. I think the music is wonderful. I think it's gorgeously shot. And I can only find the director's cut at this point. The director's cut absolutely kills the momentum of the film by going on this long, rambling, monologue-y thing from Chingachgook at the end of the film, when the much more succinct version of that at the end of the theatrical cut made the point a million times better, a million times stronger, and it just lost me the longer it went on the director's cut. And I can't get that original cut anymore. I can't find it. Everything is the director's cut. And so there I am back to the issue of I've lost the experience I fell in love with. And one could probably make an argument that the director's cut is a artistically superior version. I don't care. It's not what I like. But I now can't have what I like. But for me, there's another aspect to the attempts of any artist to update their work beyond their desire to refine and maybe even correct what they see as mistakes in the artistic expression of what is out there, whether it was their own mistakes or some outside force like a movie studio. And there is also more issues than just the audience and the retention of their experience and the ability to experience that same thing again. The thing is, the original piece of art is a time capsule. It is a time capsule not only of how the piece of art ended up, the final product, it is a time capsule of who the artist, all the artists, and especially if we're going to talk about something like film, it is a time capsule of who they were at the time it was made. So, to go along with something that is similar to the Star Wars thing, to kind of make my point, there was a special edition of Steven Spielberg's E.T. that was done and released, where a couple of additional bits of footage were added in, and somewhat more peculiarly, the cops who in the original were holding guns, those guns were digitally removed and replaced by walkie-talkies. Because Steven Spielberg, at the time that the special edition was released, was not comfortable with guns in the presence of underage and child characters. Whereas Steven Spielberg of 1982 was. And it's not just changing the art, it's breaking the time capsule, the retention of who these people were. Because you can take any piece of art, any movie, any book, any painting, any TV show. You take the same people now and you put them together again, give them the exact same tools, the same, if we're going to talk film, let's say the same budget, the same script, the same cast, all of it. Even setting aside like, oh, the actors look older. Forget that for a second. If they made the movie again, it would not be the same movie simply by virtue of the fact that they are not the same people anymore. They won't make the exact same artistic decisions that they did before because they have changed as people. So for me, what I find most frustrating about attempts by artists to update their work is that they are, in a very real way, kind of erasing history. Because this is a piece of history that retains not only the end result, but captures the people who made it at the point that they participated in its creation. At what point is a change go from tinkering to altering a piece of art? It's kind of funny because I think the answer is going to differ not only depending on who you ask, but even if you ask the same person about two different pieces of art, they will give you a different answer. There are people who will tell you and swear by the purity of the artist's intent and how that should always be respected. And that's usually, when there are calls from fans to say, hey, could you take this out? I found this offensive, or what have you. From those same kinds of sources, I will see those sorts of people argue, on the one hand, purity of artistic expression, they shouldn't have to change it. But on the other hand, if the artist actually wants to change it, if they like that piece of art, they will kick up a huge storm. It's incredibly subjective, as much as it feels like it should have an objective answer. Should artists be allowed to alter their work? I don't know. It depends on the art. It depends on the work. It depends on what the alteration is. It depends on why they wish to alter it. It depends on whether or not it is going to completely obliterate the previous existing version or will exist alongside it. And which one is more appropriate is going to completely differ in every dang case. So if I have a point to this, and I'm not sure that I do, but if I have a point, that point is probably don't try and make absolute statements about what artists should or shouldn't be allowed to do, or what audiences should or shouldn't be allowed to preserve and save from their experience. Because, and this really is the drum that I will keep beating on nearly every dang topic that I talk about, there is no absolute. Nothing is ever always. It is going to vary. It is going to depend. So don't get up somebody's butt because they said, in one instance, an artist shouldn't be allowed to change something, and in another, they say the artist should change it. And also, be aware when you yourself are inconsistent, because we're all going to be, because the circumstances change the answer. I really don't know why I felt the need to talk about this, but it was kind of on my mind. And I wanted to talk my way through it and try and navigate the quagmire just a little bit. If you've stuck through it this long, thank you for coming along with me. I have a Patreon if you like what I do and wish to support me and my ability to keep doing it. This is, in fact, my living. It's crazy. Any amount you're able to give does give you some kind of perk or reward, and obviously helps me out. But even if you can't, comment whatever your thoughts on what I've talked about down in the description. Let's talk about it. Like, share, and subscribe. All of that helps me out, but you also don't have to. It may not be your original artistic intent to lend me that kind of assistance, and if that's the case, all I can say is, you are the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. That was a rambling mess. What am I doing?